I didn't recognize her by her face. I recognized her by the way she laughed, that sharp inhale before the sound came out, like she was surprised by her own joy. I was standing outside a coffee shop, arguing with a parking meter that had already swallowed my last coins, when that laugh cut through the noise of the street and landed somewhere deep in my chest. A place I hadn't visited in years. A place I thought was sealed shut. I froze first. Then I turned. She was inside, seated near the window, leaning forward with her elbows on the table, surrounded by people who clearly adored her. Her hair was shorter now, her clothes more polished, her posture confident in a way that used to intimidate me even when we were married. She looked lighter, like someone who had shed something heavy and never looked back. She was laughing, and for a brief, humiliating second, I felt stupidly proud that I had once been the reason for that sound. Then she looked up. Our eyes met through the glass, separated by a thin reflection of passing cars, and that was the exact moment everything changed. Her laughter died instantly. Her mouth stayed slightly open, but no sound came out. Her face drained of color so fast I thought she might be sick. One of her friends touched her arm, confused, but she didn't react. She just stared at me like she'd seen something that wasn't supposed to exist anymore, like a mistake that came back with a receipt. I wish I could say I felt strong in that moment, victorious, calm. But the truth is, my hands started shaking so badly I had to clench them into fists and shove them into my coat pockets. Because 9 years earlier, this same woman had erased me from her life so cleanly that even now, standing there breathing the same air, part of me felt like I was trespassing. I shouldn't have been there. I shouldn't have existed in her world anymore. But I did, and that terrified her. She stood up abruptly, knocking her chair back. Her friends turned, startled, following her gaze straight to me. I took a step backward without thinking, my heel bumping the curb. For a second, I considered leaving, just walking away and letting her believe she imagined it. That would have been easier, kinder even. But after what she did to me, no, I stayed. Because people like her don't get haunted unless the ghost survives long enough to knock. I need to explain why this moment mattered. Why a coffee shop laugh almost made me collapse. Because 9 years ago, I wasn't a man who inspired fear or shock or silence. I was invisible, forgettable, the kind of guy people leave behind without bothering to explain why. Back then, I was married to her. And I was weak, not abusive, not cruel, just soft in all the ways the world punishes men for being. I apologized too much. I believed promises too easily. I thought love meant endurance. She used to tell me I was safe. I didn't realize that wasn't a compliment. The night she betrayed me didn't involve shouting or dramatic exits. No suitcases slammed. No screaming matches. Just quiet decisions made behind my back while I trusted her with everything I had. She smiled at me while planning a life that didn't include me. She slept beside me while emotionally rehearsing my absence. And when she finally left, she didn't even say goodbye. She vanished. No message. No warning. No explanation. One day I was a husband. The next, I was a story she told people with a shrug and a sentence that started with, "It just didn't work out." I unraveled slowly after that. Embarrassingly slowly. I replayed every conversation, every pause, every moment I chose understanding over confrontation. I blamed myself for being too gentle, too patient, too easy to abandon. Years passed. I rebuilt something resembling a life, not a glamorous one, not a loud one, but a stable, quiet existence stitched together with discipline and regret. I stopped checking social media, stopped asking mutual friends, stopped expecting closure. I assumed she'd forgotten me. Standing outside that coffee shop, watching her freeze like her past had grabbed her by the throat, I realized how wrong I was. She hadn't forgotten. She'd buried me. And buried things don't usually come back. Unless someone digs them up. And I wasn't there by accident. She didn't come outside. Not right away. She just stood there, behind the glass, her hand hovering near her purse like she was deciding between fleeing or pretending I didn't exist. I could almost hear the thoughts racing through her head. Was that really him? Why now? What does he want? The woman to her left said something, clearly confused, and Jenna snapped back in emotion like someone hit a switch. She faked a smile, nodded quickly, sat down, but she didn't touch her coffee again. I didn't move. I couldn't. I stood there like an idiot, watching her pretend to laugh again, but her eyes kept flicking toward the window, checking if I was still there. I wanted to leave. I really did. But something kept my feet planted on that sidewalk like concrete. Some mix of grief and justice and years of unfinished conversations held my body hostage. And then I remembered. She didn't know the real reason I was back in town. That made me smirk a little. See, I hadn't lived here in years. I left this city 2 months after she vanished. Too hollow to stay, too broke to fight for anything in court. I didn't even try to track her down. It was pointless. She had erased me like an old file on a corrupted drive. I heard from one of her former co-workers that she moved upstate with someone. That's all I got. One sentence summary of my failed marriage. But the universe is funnier than people give it credit for. Because guess who was assigned to lead a creative restructuring project for a boutique hotel opening right across the street from that coffee shop? Yep, me. Life has a strange rhythm when you stop trying to dance to someone else's beat. My quiet little freelance business had turned into a real company. Nothing flashy, just enough to matter. Enough to be chosen for the kind of job that brought me back to this city whether I wanted to return or not. And now here I was, staring at the ghost who once decided I didn't deserve a goodbye. A waiter brought her the bill. She didn't look at it. She just slapped down a card and stood up like she was escaping a fire. Her friends looked startled again, but Jenna waved them off and walked out, fast. She didn't see me at first. I was by the alley near the parking lot now, just far enough to look like a coincidence. But when she turned toward her car, our eyes locked again. And this time, she didn't freeze. She flinched, like she expected me to speak, or yell, or accuse. But I didn't. I just raised one eyebrow and tilted my head the way she used to do when I forgot to clean the bathroom sink. She opened her mouth to say something, but no sound came. And then she got in her car and slammed the door so hard the driver behind her jumped. She peeled out of the lot like the past was chasing her. And I just stood there, hands in my pockets, heart pounding like a drum in a locked room. Because now she knew I was back. And we both knew this wasn't over. Not even close. I didn't plan to see her again so soon. But 2 days later, there she was, walking into the same building I'd just spent the morning in, portfolio in hand, heels clacking like she owned the floor. For a second, I thought I was hallucinating. I was in the elevator, holding a rolled-up floor plan under my arm, when the doors opened and she stepped in without even glancing up. My breath caught in my throat. The door slid closed behind her. It was just us. She smelled exactly the same. Vanilla and cold ambition. And then she turned and saw me. Her expression cracked for just a second. Not full-on panic, but a quick flicker of something close to it. I watched her recalibrate in real time. Her posture straightened, her lips pressed into a tight line, her chin lifted like she'd rehearsed for this moment. "I didn't realize you were back," she said, voice clipped. I waited a beat. "Neither did you realize I'd survive, apparently." She looked down, pretending to adjust the strap on her bag. "It's been a long time, Neil." There it was, my name in her mouth again after 9 silent years. It tasted like dust. I chuckled softly, not because anything was funny, but because that was the only thing keeping me from snapping. The elevator chimed. She moved to step out first, but I stepped forward slightly, blocking her path just for a moment. Not aggressive, not threatening, just unignorable. "I'm here consulting for the Dalton Hotel launch," I said. 6-week contract. Something in her eyes flickered again. "Dalton Group." I nodded slowly. "Guess who's managing the creative side of the brand now?" She blinked once. "That's surprising." "No more surprising than watching you bolt out of that cafe like you saw the guy you buried alive." That hit her. I saw the flinch she tried to hide. She stepped around me, quick and quiet, and didn't say another word. But I didn't miss the way her hands trembled as she opened the conference room door. And that's when it clicked. She wasn't there for coffee. She wasn't even just back in town. She was working with the Dalton team. Somehow, without knowing, we'd both been pulled into the same orbit. Hired separately. Same project. Same floor. Same building. Fate. Coincidence. Or karma with a clipboard and a schedule. Either way, she'd walked into the one situation she couldn't run from. And now I had a front row seat to the unraveling. Because no matter how polished she looked now, no matter how tightly wound she kept her world, I knew something her colleagues didn't. Jenna was a runner. And runners always trip when the past keeps pace. The first Real slip came on a Wednesday. We were in a design meeting, one of those big collaborative sessions where no one actually collaborates, and everyone pretends their idea is the one that'll land the client's applause. Jenna was presenting a pitch deck, confident, sharp, the way she always used to be. She had the room. Everyone was nodding along. Until one of the junior developers asked about the design assets and who created them. Without thinking, the project lead said, "Neil's team handled that." Jenna blinked. Her mouth opened, then closed again. She turned to me, trying to hold that tight professional smile, but there was a twitch in the corner of her eye, like a glitch in perfect code. I could feel it, the tension radiating off her. I didn't say a word, just leaned back in my chair and waited. "I wasn't aware," she said, voice a little too even, a little too rehearsed. "I didn't realize we were outsourcing that portion." "We're not," the lead replied. "Neil's firm is the creative partner. In-house, technically. He's already met with the execs." The room moved on quickly, but Jenna didn't. She kept glancing at me throughout the rest of the meeting like I might jump out of my seat and shout her secrets at the ceiling. But I didn't. I just waited. Because this wasn't about revenge. Not yet. After the meeting, she followed me into the hallway. "You should have told me," she hissed under her breath. I raised an eyebrow. "Told you what? That I still exist?" She glanced around nervously, as if someone might be eavesdropping, which was funny, because that used to be my role. Always cautious, always smaller than her world. Now the roles were reversed, and she felt it too. "I thought you left this city for good," she said. "You thought a lot of things about me," I replied. "Most of them wrong." She crossed her arms. "Look, I didn't expect." "You didn't expect me to have a spine?" Her jaw tightened. "This is a professional environment. I'm not going to let our past interfere with." "With what? Your illusion of control?" That one landed. She stepped back like I'd shoved her, and for a second, I hated how satisfying it felt. I shouldn't enjoy watching her squirm. But I did. Because 9 years ago, I begged for a conversation. I begged for any explanation. I got silence. Now, every word was hers to swallow. She turned without answering and walked off. But she walked faster than before. That night, I opened an old folder on my hard drive, one I hadn't touched in years. Inside were screenshots, emails, timestamps. Things I never showed anyone. Things I'd saved for no reason other than the pain of deleting them felt worse than keeping them. Back then, I told myself I was just clinging to closure. But maybe I'd known even then. Maybe some part of me knew we weren't done. And now, neither did she. Because the thing about the truth is, it waits. Even if it takes 9 years and a corporate rebranding project to come crawling back. And I wasn't the only one in that office with secrets Jenna wouldn't want revealed. It wasn't just her reaction that tipped me off. It was what she didn't do after. Jenna didn't try to smooth things over. She didn't send a follow-up email. No fake friendly, "Hey, let's keep things professional" message. Nothing. Just silence. And for someone like her, someone who used to control every narrative, that silence meant one thing. She was hiding something. I didn't have proof, not yet. But something about the way she looked at me in that hallway, like I was a ticking bomb, told me she wasn't just shaken by my presence. She was scared of what I might still know. And she was right to be. I started watching her, not in a creepy way, just carefully. Jenna was suddenly on edge in meetings. She second-guessed her own slides. She snapped at a junior associate over a typo. She even accidentally deleted a file from the shared drive that, conveniently, was mine. Everyone else chalked it up to stress. I knew better. That Friday, during a coffee break in the office lounge, I overheard her on the phone. She thought no one else was around. I was behind a tall stack of boxes they hadn't unpacked yet, just standing there quietly, sipping a terrible cup of machine-made espresso. She was whispering, urgently, "No, he's here. I don't know how it happened." "Yes, Neil. He's working on the Dalton project." "No, I didn't tell them anything." "Of course not. Are you insane? I didn't think I'd ever see him again." Silence. Then she said it. The sentence that made my stomach drop. "If he talks, everything I've built could fall apart." She ended the call fast, then left the lounge, her heels tapping like gunshots down the hallway. I didn't move for a full minute. What could I possibly talk about that would ruin her? 9 years ago, all I knew was that she left me. No explanation, no closure. I thought maybe she had just fallen out of love, met someone else, wanted something better. But if she was this panicked now, this desperate to keep me quiet, it had to be more than that. Later that night, I pulled up my backup drive again. Not just the folder of screenshots this time, but the old synced cloud logs I never really explored. And there it was. An email. One she sent 3 days before she left me. It was to someone named Miles Faulkner. Not a name I recognized. Short, formal, but laced with enough implication to knock the wind out of me. Just a reminder, I need the settlement finalized before the end of the week. He has no idea. I want this buried before I leave. Settlement? What settlement? I dug deeper. Searched the name. Turns out, Miles was a corporate lawyer. And not just any lawyer. He worked for a media consulting firm Jenna briefly contracted for during the final year of our marriage. I clicked through the metadata. The file she sent him was a copy of a joint property agreement. Modified. My name still on it. But the payout clause, completely redacted. She'd transferred assets. Our joint savings. Without telling me. She didn't just run. She stole from me. Legally, quietly, and permanently. No wonder she was scared. No wonder she froze when she saw me. She thought I was gone for good, forgotten, broken, erased. But now I was here. And I wasn't the fragile man she left behind. This wasn't about heartbreak anymore. It was about exposing the quiet little crime she buried behind fake smiles and polished pitches. And something told me Jenna wasn't the only one who helped her pull it off. The next week, she avoided me completely. Not in the obvious way, no sudden sick days or fake meetings. Jenna was smarter than that. She showed up. She smiled. She played her role. But she always sat on the opposite side of the room, left meetings early, redirected conversations if I spoke. I could almost see her calculating, scanning the room to assess how much influence I had, how far my voice could carry. She was trying to outlast me. The problem was, I wasn't just another employee in the building anymore. A few days earlier, the hotel's investors had brought me into a closed-door strategy meeting after seeing my branding pitch. That alone was enough to rattle her. But when I casually mentioned that I'd be consulting beyond launch, overseeing internal messaging and media presence, I saw something flicker behind her eyes. Not fear, not frustration. It was worse. It was panic, barely restrained by pride. The woman who once told me I lacked initiative now had to sit in a room where I had veto power. But that wasn't enough for me. Not yet. I needed to know who else was involved. Because Jenna couldn't have redirected our shared savings on her own. Not without a witness, a notary, something to shield her. And there was one person who had been circling her back then, someone I always had a bad feeling about. Cameron Wills. He was her old boss. Director of strategy at the agency she worked for during our last year together. I only met him twice, both times during those awful holiday parties where I stood off to the side, holding her coat while she networked. The guy had that arrogant, polished charm, firm handshake, fake laugh, the type who always called me Bud, like I was the valet. I remembered one night, late, I heard her on the phone with him. I was half asleep. She said, "Don't worry. It's handled. He doesn't ask questions." When I brought it up, she told me it was client stuff. I believed her. Like a fool. Now I wasn't so sure. So I did something I probably shouldn't have. I paid for a background trace. It wasn't illegal, just ethically gray. But I needed clarity. I needed to know what I'd been blind to. What I uncovered was worse than I expected. Cameron and Jenna had co-founded a shell consulting firm 6 months before she left me. Quietly. No website. No public branding. But it had one purpose: redirecting assets from small clients, moving money under the radar for tax planning and internal advisory fees. My name appeared once, buried in a transfer document, linked to a transaction I never signed. A signature that wasn't mine. A digital approval log that came from her IP. She didn't just leave me. She framed me. Briefly. Carefully. Just enough to ensure that if I ever asked too many questions, the trail would lead back to me. And she would walk away clean. Until now. Because now, I had everything. Her emails. Her contact with Miles. Her connection to Cameron. And that old redacted agreement. And thanks to the meeting invite I saw earlier that morning, I knew exactly where she would be that afternoon. A private client showcase. Small group. Executive level. And I would be standing 10 feet away, armed with the one thing she'd never expected me to have. Proof. She'd buried me once, and it worked. But this time, I was the one holding the shovel. I didn't crash the event. I was invited, officially, professionally, with my name printed on a sleek white badge that Jenna must have choked on when she saw it in the RSVP list. The client showcase was being held on the top floor of the newly renovated Dalton Hotel, a soft opening for investors and press, and the air was thick with pretentious handshakes and overpoured champagne. Jenna was already there when I arrived, dressed in a sharp navy suit, standing beside a giant digital display of the Dalton rebrand, a design I had personally signed off on. She was laughing, talking fast, owning the room. But the moment I stepped in, I saw her shoulders shift. Just slightly. Just enough. I didn't approach her. Not yet. I made small talk, walked the room, nodded at familiar faces. But I made sure she knew I was there. I moved like a shadow just behind her confidence. And then, halfway through the CEO's speech, I stepped outside onto the rooftop terrace. I knew she'd follow. And she did. "I don't know what game you're playing," she said behind me, her voice low and furious. "But this has to stop." I turned slowly. "You mean the game where I show up to do my job, and you try to pretend you didn't rob me blind?" She took a step closer. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Oh, but I do, Jenna. I know about Miles Faulkner. I know about the modified agreement. I know about Cameron Wills and your little consulting ghost company. I even have the fake signature you used. You should have been more careful with your cloud backups." Her face paled. The mask cracked. For a moment, she didn't say anything. She just stared at me like she was trying to calculate how fast this could all spiral out of control. "This could ruin both of us," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. I smiled bitterly. "Only one of us committed fraud. I was just stupid. You were strategic. You think anyone's going to believe you? After all this time?" "I don't need them to believe me," I said, pulling a small flash drive from my pocket and tossing it gently onto the table beside us. "I just need them to see the facts. I've already backed it up 6 times. If anything happens to me, it auto-emails the whole folder to Dalton's board, your old firm's compliance department, and 2 journalists I've spoken with anonymously." She looked at the drive like it was a grenade. "You want money?" she asked suddenly. "Is that what this is?" I almost laughed. "I want the truth. I want you to admit what you did. You could have just left me. You could have said it to my face. But you chose the nuclear option. You didn't just break my heart. Jenna, you tried to erase me from the story entirely." She sat down, slowly, like her legs couldn't support the weight of it anymore. "I did what I had to do," she murmured. "No," I said, stepping closer, my voice shaking. "You did what you wanted. And now, you live with it." For a long minute, we didn't speak. The wind moved around us, high above the city. I could hear music faintly from the lobby below, the kind of music meant to make people forget where they are. But I wasn't forgetting anymore. I was remembering everything. And Jenna finally realized she couldn't outrun the past when it's staring her in the face, wearing a staff badge, holding a flash drive with her name on it. Whatever came next, it was already too late for her to stop it. She didn't try to grab the flash drive, didn't lunge, didn't scream or deny. That told me everything I needed to know. She was smart enough to realize it was over. At least, the part of her life where she could rewrite history without anyone questioning the missing chapters. Still, I didn't want revenge. I know how that sounds after everything I just told you, but it's the truth. I wasn't standing there to destroy her. I wasn't even looking to humiliate her. I just wanted to close the book she never let me finish. After a long silence, Jenna finally stood. She didn't look at me, just stared out over the city like she was trying to remember how she got so far from where she started. "I didn't think you'd bounce back," she admitted. That made me laugh. Not bitterly, not smugly, just honestly. "I didn't bounce back, Jenna. I rebuilt, brick by brick, year by year. While you were busy hiding from your choices, I was learning how to live with mine." She nodded slowly. "So what now? You going to leak everything?" "I'm not interested in your downfall," I said. "I'm interested in walking away with the truth in my pocket and peace in my chest." She looked stunned by that, like it hadn't even occurred to her that I didn't want to ruin her life, just reclaim mine. I left her standing there. I didn't look back. 3 weeks later, I submitted my final report for the project. The Dalton execs were pleased. They offered to extend my contract. I declined. I'd had enough of the city, enough of walking past ghosts dressed in business suits. I moved again, not to run, but to choose. A smaller town, closer to the coast. A place where my windows faced the sunrise and not another cold skyline. My business kept growing. Quietly, honestly. And so did I. One afternoon, months later, I got a letter. Handwritten. No return address, but I knew the handwriting. Jenna. Inside was no apology. Not exactly. But she admitted what she did. Said she'd come clean to the people who needed to hear it. Said she was tired of running. that I had given her the gift of a second chance, not with me, but with herself. I folded the letter, placed it in a drawer, and never replied. Not out of anger, out of peace. Because, for the first time in years, I wasn't stuck in the past. I wasn't chasing closure. I had already found it. In truth, in quiet, in surviving what tried to break me, and choosing, every single day after, to live better.